RJ Moten is a player who he's not an impact starter or anything like that, but got regular reps on the field, was an integral part of the defense and the rotation there in the secondary. Is there a reason a guy like that who gets regular reps and is in prominently in the depth chart decides to move on?
That's something I'm still trying to figure out because I mean he's considered a co-starter there, and I would imagine maybe it's because he lost I would say a good portion of his expected. Why I couldn't say expected is beyond me. He got his
Lost
a lot of his
day, I know.
expected snaps to Makari Page. I think that probably had something to do with it, but I mean, it was a three-headed monster is what they were calling the safeties between those two and Rod Moore. And I had dinner with Jake Butt I think it was the night before the spring game, and he was just waxing poetic about RJ Moten. He was just like, I just think that guy is so underrated, and he's set, he's just such a baller, and he's one of those guys that I pegged as like a future team captain, what it could have been this year, maybe next year. So that's him along with Nikhai Hill-Green, who his departure makes a little more sense when you see he ended up at Charlotte. Maybe RJ Moten ends up at Charlotte as well, following Biff Poggi, who was kind of Jim Harbaugh's consigliere. But like at least Nikhai Hill-Green played for Biff Poggi at St. Francis Academy in Baltimore in high school. But maybe RJ follows him, and then it makes a little bit more sense. But otherwise, I mean, perhaps it's a playing time issue, whether it's the guys ahead of him, or you look at maybe they've got 2 4-stars behind, theoretically, and Keon Sabb, who actually was a 5-star at one point. When he committed to Clemson initially, he was a 5-star, but when he flipped to Michigan, he was downgraded to being a 4-star prospect. And Zeke Berry, those are 2 guys that were highly coveted, and they're entering their second year. So maybe he felt a mixture of guys breathing down his neck, as well as dwindling playing time as a starter. I can't really say for sure, but I don't want to say it's alarming, because at least what we've seen with this transfer portal, as far as Michigan's concerned, they've addressed the needs that they've had in the early going coming out of the season. The guys that they've lost 4 so far this last week, between the 2 I just mentioned, wide receiver AJ Henning, who saw his numbers dwindle last year after being heavily utilized in 2021, and they lost Amani Dent, a freshman safety from Jacksonville. I think he was the lowest or second lowest rated player in the 2023 class. He didn't play a snap last year. I do believe he was injured, but again, uphill battle when it came to playing time. You can look at those departures this last week and say those were at least at really fairly deep position groups, right? Linebacker, it's been kind of one of those things where how are some of these other guys going to get on the field? Even with Nikhai Hill-Green, a former starter, how is he going to get on the field now that he's healthy? Because not only do they have the guys that started last year, but they brought in Ernest Hausman, who started from Nebraska last year. Safety, you could sit there and say, all right, well, they've got the 2 main guys. You thought of it as a 3-headed monster, but you still really looked at it as Rod Moore and Makari Page. And people have been kind of waiting to see what these 2 sophomores can do. So you can kind of look around and say those are at least at those position groups that are pretty deep. It's not like they're losing, Chris Jenkins, or one of their defensive tackles. It's not like they lost. They already had lost a tight end in Eric All. It'd be another thing if like Colston Loveland decided to move on, even though they brought in AJ Barner. So it's kind of a quality problem, I think, when you're trying to build a roster. And you have a lot of depth, is that you're going to lose some guys, especially guys that maybe aren't seeing the type of playing time that they want. And sometimes that's a double-edged sword. I mean, just look at Taylor Upshaw, the edge rusher. He's gotten the opportunity to start the season as the starter, as an edge rusher each of the last 2 years. Saw his time got captivated by David Ojabo in 2021. This last year, he got usurped by Iabioki. And before Iabioki even moved on, he decided, I'm heading out to Colorado. I'm going to see what Coach Prime's all about. Well, guess what? He's back in the transfer portal again as part of that mass exodus. So it's one of those things where the grass isn't always greener, but certainly when you're a young guy and you want to make a name for yourself, sometimes the grass is greener. So that would be my guess, is that that's what he's kind of looking for is just a better opportunity to solidify himself. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's necessarily going to get it.